Now, Samuel Taylor Coleridge was a leading poet of the English Romantic movement in the early 19th century. S.T. Coleridge worked collaboratively with William Wordsworth in writing the lyrical ballads that eventually became the manifesto of the English Romantic movement. Coleridge brings out the power of imagination in creating a work of art through his poem Kubla Khan. About the origin of this poem, S.T. Coleridge himself said that in the summer of 1797 he had gone to his lonely farm where, due to ill health, he took a dose of anodyne. Anodyne is a kind of painkiller that had been prescribed to him, and he fell asleep for 3 long hours. Before he had fallen asleep, he was reading a book titled Purchas His Pilgrimage, which contains Samuel Purchas's account of Kubla Khan's summer pleasure dome. And as he slept under the influence of the opium, Coleridge saw the pleasure dome with such vivid images in his dream, and when he finally woke up, he clearly remembered the scenes of his dream. So he took a pen and started to write this poem, Kubla Khan. The text of the poem goes, "In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree, where Alph the sacred river ran, through caverns measureless to man, down to a sunless sea, so twice 5 miles of fertile ground, with walls and towers were girdled round. And there were gardens bright with sinuous rills, where blossomed many an incense-bearing tree, and here were forests ancient as the hills, enfolding sunny spots of greenery. But oh, the deep romantic chasm which slanted down the green hill, athwart a cedarn cover, a savage place as holy and enchanted as ere beneath a waning moon was haunted by woman wailing for her demon lover. And from this chasm with ceaseless turmoil seething, as if this earth is fast, thick pans were breathing, a mighty fountain momently was forced, amid whose swift half-intermitted burst, huge fragments vaulted like rebounding hail of chaffy grains beneath the thresher's flail. And mid these dancing rocks that once and ever, it flung up momently the sacred river, 5 miles meandering with amazing motion, through wood and dale the sacred river ran, then reached the cavern measureless to man, and sank in tumult to a lifeless ocean, and mid this tumult Kubla heard from far ancestral voices prophesying war. The shadow of the dome of pleasure floated midway on the waves, where was heard the mingled measure from the fountain and the caves. It was a miracle of rare device, a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. A damsel with a dulcimer in a vision once I saw, it was an Abyssinian maid, and of her dulcimer she played, singing of Mount Abora. Could I revive within me her symphony and song? To such deep delight it would win me, that with music loud and long, I would build that dome in air, that sunny dome, those caves of ice, and all who heard should see them there, and all should cry, beware, beware. His flashing eyes, his floating hair, weave a circle round him thrice, and close your eyes with holy dread. For he on honey-dew had fed, and drunk the milk of paradise." Coleridge slept under the influence of the opium. He saw the pleasure dome with vivid images and wrote the poem Kubla Khan. But as he was midway through the poem, a man from Porlock visited him and talked to him about some kind of business for like an hour. And later, when the man of Porlock left, he tried to recall the memories, recall his dream. But sadly, he couldn't retrieve his memory. He compares it to as if the images from his dreams were washed away, floating on the surface of the running stream, and a stone was thrown to disturb the running images. Coleridge calls his work Kubla Khan as more of a psychological curiosity rather than a work of poetic merits. The poem begins with the reader being introduced to a place called Xanadu, where the Emperor Kubla Khan built his pleasure dome. In this place was a sacred river called Alph, and the river ran through deep caves that humans cannot measure. The river runs through these caves to reach the dark sea where sunlight never reached. It was a 10-mile land of rich fertile soil covering through and through. It had towers and walls surrounding it and protecting it, and the forests there were old and ancient and untouched by modernism or civilization. There were gardens filled with flowering trees and the sweet smell of nature. And a deep chasm, deep gulf that led to the green hill full of apple trees. Coleridge calls it a savage place, holy and enchanted, far from industrialism and touch of modernism. It was night time when the moon shines, and the place is haunted by a crying woman wailing for her lover, who is neither human nor angel, but a demon. In these caves, the earth continues to keep moving as if the earth was breathing, and a fountain of water gushes out. And as the water drops back to the ground, it was like the grains falling beneath the thresher's flail. The water gushed out in a confused motion, running for 5 miles, moving swiftly and flowing towards an ocean that lay lifeless, motionlessly. And through the great sounds of the moving water, Kubla Khan could hear prophecies about war. The shadow of the pleasure dome floated on the surface of the ocean. It was a sunny pleasure dome with caves of ice. In another scene was an Abyssinian woman, an Abyssinian damsel with her dulcimer, and she was singing of Mount Abora. It was a beautiful song and an enchanting song, but the speaker says that he couldn't remember the lyrics and could not revive the symphony and her song. He also adds that if ever he could re-sing her song or replay the song to his readers, it would be like building the pleasure dome of music in the air. It would be impossible and miraculous. It would be a wonder for anyone to see, and it would shake people with fear. If he could repeat the same song of the Abyssinian lady with the dulcimer, people would say that it was unnatural, and that it was touched by mysticism, and that the poet was fed with honeydew and the milk of paradise to have been able to create such a music in the air. The poem is the dream of S.T. Coleridge, full of opposite and contrasting images and contrasting ideas, as you will find that there is fear and then there is joy. There is beauty and yet it is a horrific image, and there is a sunny dome and sunny spots in icy caverns and icy land. It speaks of the tumultuousness and restlessness of water, and yet there is a lifeless, motionless water body of an ocean. There is a woman crying for love, but that love is in the form of a demon. It is a savage place, yet it is enchanted and holy. It speaks of peace and rest in the pleasure dome, and yet the place is filled with the ancestral voices that prophesy war. So we find that S.T. Coleridge paints this beautiful picture of a pleasure dome using different contrasting ideas which seem to be contrasting with one another. The words seem to be contrasting with one another, and yet it makes sense. And that, according to S.T. Coleridge, is the imaginative power of an artist, of a creator. So that was an explanation of S.T. Coleridge's Kubla Khan. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.